Hey everyone, welcome to Encounters USA. If it's aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, or Dogman you're looking for, you came to the right place. Now listen up as we listen to some of the latest encounters. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Encounters USA. I'm Matt.
And I'm Barbara.
And we are here to welcome you to a brand new podcast. Now, the first thing that we want to make clear to everybody is that we are a unique podcast in that we are incorporating aliens. We're incorporating Bigfoot. And we're incorporating what is called the Dogman into our repertoire of investigations. And so it's going to be not only a different podcast, but it's going to be an amazing podcast based on the fact that our co-host Barbara has an amazing background that we're going to be talking about in just a second. But before we get to that, we want to first of all, explain that this podcast is going to be available in all the podcast networks as well as on YouTube. So, does that sound exciting, Barbara?
Yes, it does.
All right, Barbara. Well, I just have to welcome you as our co-host on Encounters USA. So, here's a hearty welcome. Welcome, Barbara. Welcome to Encounters USA.
Thank you.
Now, the first thing that I want to point out to you, because it really is, it sounds like I'm talking to Barbara like she's a guest, but she's not really a guest. She is doing this podcast, and as it goes on, Barbara is going to be assuming more and more roles as far as doing the things that I'm doing right now. But for right now, I want Barbara to feel comfortable with this, and she is an amazing guest. So I'm just going to have her talk a little bit about her background. Can you tell us a little bit about your history with like the paranormal, Barbara?
Yes. So I am an identical twin and a psychic and physical medium. And I've been having encounters since I was little, more paranormal. I just joined SFRT, which is the Bigfoot Research Group. And I'll be having my first investigation in Folk, Arkansas coming in June. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, and I want to also add a kind of a unique little bit of history, is that you are not the only one of you, are you, in a certain sense?
Yeah, I'm an identical twin.
Okay, so that gives you also some kind of psychic abilities?
Yes, we have kind of like a telepathic thing where we've had full conversations in our sleep. We both are psychic physical mediums. So, and we're both in the paranormal field.
All right. So if it's not obvious, Barbara is going to bring some an amazing outlook, an amazing perspective on the investigations that we are going to be conducting. Now, on this podcast, we are not only doing investigations, we're not only looking at certain phenomena, but we are also bringing in authors, we're bringing in researchers, and so you will have just a plethora of different things going on. And of course, we're always going to be able to bring you up to date on the latest sightings, aliens, cryptid news. So the first thing that I would like to talk about today, Barbara, is I did a research, kind of a research project, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But before we do, Barbara, I just have a question that I've always had burning in my mind, and so that's going to be the topic of today's discussion, and that is the Dogman. It's not really a dog. It's not really a man. So what is it? And I know you have some ideas about it. So
Yes.
right off the bat, just give me what you think in one quick sentence.
Well, my perspective is that it is of the ancient alien race. And I think that of pretty much all the cryptids. So Bigfoot, Dogman, I think they're coming here through portals. That's my theory.
All right. So we're going to leave that right there. And if you're listening to this, you can sort your thoughts out because we're going to be coming back to that. But before we go into that question, the burning question of the podcast, we want to talk a little bit about, I did an investigation a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it was about 2 weeks ago. And I actually went out into the field, Barbara, and I took a look at an encounter that happened a few years ago. So I'd like to take a look at that. So
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, before we have a look at the clip, do you have any questions about what we might be seeing or?
Where is it?
Actually, that's a good question. It was in North Bend, Washington, which is right off of the I-90 freeway. And it was a place where I would have been initially skeptical due to the high population that there would have been any kind of cryptid sighting there, just due to the fact that the place is a very high traffic area.
Okay. Well, I've read in various documents about the Dogman that they are in very highly populated areas. A lot of the encounters.
Yeah. All right. So, I think this is going to be a topic we're going to have to cover in just one episode. But, the more I listen to these encounters, it's more of a narrative about the encroachment of human beings upon pristine wilderness. And It's always the same story. It's and it just makes me sick. I live in the Northwest. And so in the old days, Chevy, Ford, and GM, and the car makers around the country, they had all the money and the banks, of course. But now that's changing. Now it's these people, these developers, and they're going to develop us right into not being able to grow food, and we're not going to have any critters left. So I think this is a narrative about that. But we'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that on another show. And for all of you people out there that are into logging and everything, we understand there's a balance, but sometimes we have to leave well enough alone. And that's kind of one of the reasons we're doing this podcast. So, Barbara, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at this video now. And it's pretty self-explanatory. So we'll check it out, and then we'll come back and see what you think.
All right, sounds good.
So I want to show you something very quickly now. This is the trail that I'm going up, and I want you to see, so this is the trail, and if those people are correct, that's the trail that they took. Now look at this. Right here across the trail, there is this tree is downed, okay, so no problem, it's a windfall. The wind comes predominantly from that direction. Not a big deal, except that it's crossed. And it's crossed by what? This tree fell the completely opposite way, and it's not even rooted up. That tree's been broken. So it looks like somebody or something tried to block the way here. So what better reason to continue up that trail? And it's going to be tough going, so I hope we run into the trail on the other side, because it's going to take about all I've got. All right, so what I guess I should explain a little bit, if just in case for people that it kind of went a little bit fast. But basically, I was on a trail that these people said that they had taken, and their directions for, like, their description of the Bigfoot was fantastic, right?
Right.
but their directions were not very good, and nothing matched what they said in the encounter. So I went through I climbed up hills. I climbed up the sides of mountains. I went places that I shouldn't have gone, just trying to find the place where they went. And I couldn't, it was very difficult to do that. So when I came across this, that was like, wow, because I see this stuff, and I'm like you, Barbara. I think we joined the Sasquatch Files research team, the SFRT. I think we joined the same time, so that's kind of funny. But
yeah, roughly.
But yeah, I have seen people talk about the bent over trees and all that. But when I saw that, it was like, wow, that might actually be it. So I thought that was a little bit unusual. So that is our investigation for today. On our next podcast, which should be airing on Friday, I did another investigation where a policeman was actually almost stalked by a Bigfoot on a place called Harstein Island in Washington State. So we'll look at another investigation, and I'd like to get a hold of that police officer, and it'd be nice to get him to come on in and at least a comment. So I just want to say before we move on, if you have any comments, please, this podcast is available on YouTube, and I don't know about iTunes and Google Play where it also plays, but if you have comments, go to YouTube, leave a comment. You agree, you disagree, and of course, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to tell Barbara how beautiful she is, well, of course, we're going to appreciate that as well. All right. So, Barbara.
Yes.
Today, what is our discussion? What is our topic about?
Today, we're talking about the Dogman.
All right. So you want to repeat? You want to repeat the question, or do you want to just jump into your former thesis?
Do you want me to ask you the question?
Well, no, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. The question is this.
Okay.
Dogman. It's not a dog. It's not a man.
No.
So why do we call it Dogman?
Well, there's two theories. One being it looks like a canine because that's one of the eyewitness accounts. And the other one is it's half canine, half human. So the bottom part would be human and the face would be canine. So that's two different eyewitness accounts. Now, a lot of people think it's a werewolf. Some people think it's an evil entity. Some people think it's an ancient alien. I being one of those people. But
well, Barbara, can we slow that down a little bit, because some people think it's a werewolf.
Yes.
Some people. Well, let's talk about that first. Okay. First of all, werewolf meaning, and I think that I studied 2 semesters of German in college, right. And I believe that wer in German is who. So it's like
I was actually born in Germany.
So where is who, right? In German, wer is who.
I haven't spoken.
Well, I think
German
it's who.
Since I was really little.
So you're literally saying who wolf. I guess, I think, if that's where that where comes from. All right. So, but the problem with that is, at least as far as what's accepted, werewolf is a human being most of the time, right?
Yes.
So what do you say about that?
Well, some people think it's a shapeshifter, which would be technically what a werewolf does. It shapeshifts from a man to a wolf, or like a half man, half wolf type of thing. So that's one of the theories.
Do you agree with that theory?
I don't. But there's many people that do, so I'm not one to discount anyone else's beliefs.
Well, okay, so then let me throw this at you. Before we move on, because we got to get to that ancient alien connection, but is it possible that, because we are talking about aliens, we're talking about Bigfoot, we're talking about the Dogman, but is it possible that there's not just one type, and that maybe there is a shape-shifting wolfman? And let's we have to put that on the burner for a second, but do you think there's different types?
It's possible.
It's possible? Okay, so when you're talking about a shapeshifter, you're talking about
there's different kinds of Bigfoot, right?
Right. But for the Dogman, are you talking about like the Skinwalker? Is that the shapeshifter we're talking about?
Yeah, because that's basically what a shapeshifter is categorized as, a Skinwalker.
Okay.
That's an Indian thing.
Okay. So, and then you said, so there's the werewolf, which you classify as a shapeshifter. So is there a documentation of shapeshifters like in Europe? Because the werewolf comes from Germany.
Right.
Right. So is there a history of shapeshifting in Germany? I mean,
well, the Dogman has been seen in every continent except for Antarctica. So it's possible that this could be just a shapeshifter or a skinwalker that was originated there.
Oh, okay. But is it a legend, or do you think it stems from, how they say that legends and myths are based in some kind of reality? Do you think it's based on eyewitness accounts, or?
Yeah, I really do think that they've been seen since, thousands of years ago, I think. And then that's how folklore and everything else like that comes about, is just eyewitness accounts and people talking about it over time.
Okay. So you said you were talking about, we're going to go into ancient Egypt. What did you say before that?
What part?
Excuse me. I don't remember that we were going to go into that it's an ancient alien. We had said something about it was a werewolf.
Yes.
And there was something else.
Some people think it's an evil entity of some sort.
Okay. All right. So we can obviously jump into down a whole bunch of different paths. So let's just jump right into Egypt, because I can talk about it.
Okay.
So what about Egypt?
So I think that it's an ancient alien race, and I think they come here through portals. And the Dogman is like Anubis, which is a jackal type god being in Egypt. And if you know anything about Egypt, that's also, there's a theory that the ancient builder race built Egypt or helped build Egypt. So that would coincide with the whole ancient alien theory.
All right. Do you do any remote viewing by any chance?
I dabble in it. I'm actually taking a course right now. I mostly have visions.
The reason that I ask you that is that, if you look at the Farsight videos, they talk about basically the same thing you're talking about, but they're talking about they don't describe like the Dogman. They describe different entities that basically came down and told the people living there that if we do this, then you'll have power and you'll have electricity. And so I've heard, from listening to different accounts, and I don't want to use the guy's name. I think his name is Josh, but I've heard him talking on the Sasquatch Chronicles, and he's talking about the Indians in India. And I'm a history person, so I don't want to cite anybody without giving the source. So that might be annoying sometimes, but he said that there were dogmen in Indian folklore, dogmen that were traders, and that they wove silk or or something, and that they just spoke with a howl, or they didn't communicate, and they fit all the descriptions. But so my question is, I mean, it's really sounds kind of pretty crazy, these Indian or these dogman weavers. And you think those claws would tear up the cloth or whatever, but probably got a way around that. But anyway, the Indians seem to think that they were like not a god race, but a race of beings, and like a tribe. Do you agree with that?
Yes, because I think there are different alien races, so it's possible that they're one of them, and from different dimensions. Okay,
yeah, and there's a whole I want to say gamut of things that we're going to cover, but and we are going to be talking about portals and dimensions, but not particularly in this episode.
Right.
So when we're talking about the Anubis was a god. And then we have a connection to the dog star. And, you have to wonder, like, what is the significance of that? Because, I'm sure you and I are the same. Growing up, we never heard of any of this stuff. And then, bam, suddenly, we've seen the walls of the pyramids and of Luxor or whatever, but we didn't hear anything about any dogman until recently, right?
Well, I think that in the paintings in Egypt, dogmen like Anubis are depicted. So who's to say that they aren't pictures of said alien race? So.
Okay. All right. So this is Encounters USA. So let's fly back across the pond and let's talk about the dogman in America. So when's the first sighting of a dogman?
I think it was in Wisconsin. Sorry, my lighting's gone. Wisconsin, and it was originally the Monster of Bray Road. Okay.
All right. So you want to talk a little bit about that, about how that went down?
That was just the first eyewitness account. And from there's been many encounters throughout the United States. Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Texas, New York State are just a few of the United States side states. So, or encounters.
Okay. So, we want to stick to because we can go in so many different places, but we want to stick to our initial question is it a dog or is it a man? Now, the Beast of Bray Road, that was this century, right? Or the last century, I guess.
The last century.
Yeah. So what about native encounters? Because when you talk about skinwalkers, et cetera, then we're talking about native encounters that happened like a long time ago, or at least within 200-300 years. So do we know of any native encounters?
I didn't come across any in my research, so I'm not too sure.
All right. Well, before the comments start flaring up, there was a story, and you have to remember, Barbara, that I wake up at night, and to put myself back to sleep, I listen to these stories on. So, like that's how I'm doing my research. I'm technically falling asleep, but I'm also doing research. But there was a story that happened, I believe, in the late 1700s in Canada, that a dogman-like creature was, I think it was killing these Indians' dogs. And so they, that's pretty crazy. That bows and arrows. They said, well, we'll go gang up on it and kill it. So they did that. And they said that when they did, that it screamed like a man before it died. And that's
interesting.
Yeah. So when we're talking about a dog. Man, that's like the only time that I've ever heard any attribute of this dog man having something that has to do with a man. So, but that is also a very, it's an encounter from much long ago. So give me an example of an encounter that sticks out in your mind that gives you the best idea of what this thing is.
I'm trying to think of just one. Offhand, I can't think of one offhand.
What about, okay, so you talked earlier about the description of the Dogman.
Yeah.
So I would say that is not really so much a dog, it's a wolf.
Well, yeah, they said that a lot of the encounters that I came across, they said either it was a canine, like it looked like a canine. It was up on two legs and looked like a dog all the way. And then the other one, I think it was a type 3, they said. And that was the head of a dog in the body of a man. So it actually looked more like a Sasquatch type body.
All right. So now, what did you say, a type 3?
Yeah.
So is that a type 3 as the head of a dog and a body of a man?
Yes. And then the canine was the type of other one that people described.
All right, Barbara, then let's hear it. What's a type 1?
They don't have a type 1. They just said type 3 and canine. That's the only 2 that I came across.
There's no 1 or 2?
Not that I came across, no.
Wow. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's odd. Okay. Well, maybe, they used to have like serial numbers be higher up so people would think there was more people or things in the company. So maybe they did that with the Dogman. I don't know. All right. So here's what I think, because we're trying to figure out, is it really a dog or is it really a man? And I think that everything that is described by it or described by people is that it sounds more like a wolf. Do you agree with that?
Well, based on what I've researched, there's 2 types, so it depends on which type you encounter.
Yeah, but I have not, and not to take anything away from your whatever this guy was. Well, I assume he's wearing clothes or something.
No.
Maybe going to work. Oh, okay. He had
the Sasquatch like bottom half.
Oh, he had a Sasquatch body.
Yeah, like a Sasquatch body, like the man looking body, but the head was canine. Whereas the other sighting, which is they call the canine sighting, actually looks all dog. It actually looks like a canid.
All right. Okay, so this is getting complicated, and I want people to understand that it's what we do. We're trying to figure out that, there's so many of these sightings that are happening now. We're really trying to track down particular species, if we can,
right,
particular creatures, so that people can say, I saw that person, or I saw that Bigfoot, or I saw that family. We want to start to match things together. So these questions may seem mundane or they may even seem crazy at times, but there's a reason for them. And that is it. And one of the things that we have to establish, because people have different descriptions, is that there are different species. So this is one that I may have heard of, but I'm not really familiar with. So the type 3, it's actually a Sasquatch body and a dog head, or I guess you could say Italian. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, I'm just kidding if anybody listening is Italian out there. So, and that reminds me also, Barbara, I have to make a public apology to a couple of people at the, they're in a paranormal Southern Facebook group, and I was in the South for 4 years in the Army, and I had a fun time. I had a nice friend, so I always make jokes about people from the South, and I think I went too far. So I want to send a apology, a shout out to anybody who may be offended by my Southern, my jokes about the South. So there's
I'm from
that.
the South.
Yeah, I know that. So luckily it wasn't you. Otherwise, this would be
not originally, but I'm in the South now.
Yep. If it was you that was offended, this would be a real dull podcast.
Yeah.
And confusing. Okay, so this is what I gather from listening to different accounts of this Dogman. The first thing is that I have heard that from the descriptions is that there is wherever there is a brown one, brown with brown fur, that one tends to be the dominant one of the other pack. I've also heard that they, because we're also going to be talking about, along with aliens and Bigfoot, we're going to be talking about people going missing and what's happening to them. And these are very, very real suspects. So we'll be talking about that in a future podcast, but there's always that connection. So,
abduction.
So in the encounters that we see with Dogman, we're still calling that because we haven't found a new name for him yet, I guess. But the Dogman seems to be an intimidator. Do you agree with that? He's just there to intimidate?
Yeah, I didn't come across very many aggression cases. They were few and far between, if that.
Okay. As compared to like a Bigfoot where there's a lot more incidents of aggression?
Well, I think with Bigfoot also, it's intimidation as well. I don't think that they mean to be aggressive. I think they're just protecting their territory and stuff like that. So I don't really think it's aggression.
All right. So that of course brings up the question, wouldn't the Dogmen be protecting their territory, or do they not have a sense of maybe they have territory that needs to be protected?
I don't know. I see in the case of Bigfoot, I think they are telepathic. I think they're thinking at a higher dimension than we are. So I think they sense things that we don't. And I think that's why they aren't caught on camera very much. And I think maybe the Dogman might be the same.
Okay, so that is the Bigfoot characteristics are definitely something we have to talk about soon, but let's talk about Dogman characteristics.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I think the Dogmen are similar.
Are they telepathic?
I think they might be. And I think they can sense when people are in the area, like they have that sixth sense, kind of like psychics do. And I think that's why I am very interested in the cryptids.
Okay, so I've heard on accounts that, let's just take this because we want to look at, the common denominators of encounters. So especially Encounters USA, but we also want to look at the Dogman seems to know about weapons. They seem to know when you have one, and it seems to be that the Dogman will attack you if you have a weapon. Let's just say that from all the things that we've seen, a Dogman will make some kind of defensive posture if you are carrying a weapon. Is that agreed?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. But it's not, but a Bigfoot will be aggressive basically just if you're in its territory, right?
No, I really agree that it's the same as the Dogman. I think that they're aware that whether or not you have a weapon, I think it's the telepathic connection.
Okay. So do you think that because as far as Bigfoot goes, I think that they have a big brain, and so they have abilities that we don't have because our brain is not that big and possibly not that developed yet, whereas we might have abilities they don't have, like making deodorant and soap. But
Oh, jeez.
and no offense, Bigfoots, if you're out there, you have a lovely lilac scent, and I don't know why people complain so much about it. If you're watching, I don't mean to offend you, but going back to the Dogman, what does he have? He can sense your. You have a gun. You think he can sense your intentions?
Yes,
or
I
she?
do. Mm-hmm.
Do you? So I've heard many people say there's good ones and there's bad ones. Do you agree with that?
Well, that's polarity. So there's good and bad in everything. So I would agree.
Okay. All right. So here's the 25-cent question. What are they doing here?
What are they doing here? Well, if you go on the ancient alien race theory, if they were an alien race, possibly they lost their planet and they are here because we have things that they no longer have. They could just be coming here through portals and maybe getting things that they don't have where they're from.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about that for a little bit, because we were kind of going to talk about their characteristics and we kind of got off tangent. But okay, so physically, what can a dog man do physically?
Physically, I think it's the same as Bigfoot. It pretty much roams where it's at in the United States or whatever continent it's on.
Could they get a medal in the Olympics, do you think, or
No?
No? Well, I don't know. Well, okay, so what I'm trying to get at is there's stories of how fast they run. I mean, there's stories of them chasing cars at 60 miles an hour sometimes.
Okay.
I have a theory, and it goes along with yours. And you seem to think that they're from possibly another place, right?
Yes.
So I think that whatever place it is that they may be from, it's like the astronauts on the moon, where if they went to the moon, of course, then when you see them making those big leaps, well, gravity is much less on the moon. So we have very strong muscles for Earth gravity. And they are able to do these things, like they can jump like 30 yards at just a pop, and are capable of amazing speeds. And the same thing that we'd be capable of if we were in like half gravity. So maybe
the density is different.
Yeah, maybe that is that supports your theory or our theory, I guess, that these things do come from another place where gravity and who knows, maybe time and space are completely different. And one more thing I want to say to just kind of support that, when going back to a Bigfoot, is they seem to be, and I actually did a video on my Encounters USA video about this Bigfoot that they got on a game trail camera in 2010 in Manitoba. But in that video and in the camera, the Bigfoot is just, it's sitting there, right? So how did he get there? I mean, it would have had to have tripped the game camera in order to get into the picture, but it's just sitting there. So why is it just sitting there, and how did it get in the picture without tripping the game camera? So people made all kind of comments about that picture, but nobody asked that question, is how did this thing get in the camera? So that's another thing that I want to, that I think that we need to look at, is that these things are not always visible. And
I think that they're just like, they're vibing at a different frequency.
Okay, I buy that. And the thing that I wanted to throw in here, and I was listening to these guys on one of these, podcasts talking about, I don't want to hear about portals, and I don't want to hear about whatever we're talking about. And I understand that is it's a good way to, because there's such a ha-ha factor involved with this kind of a topic that they want to say, we're doing strict research, but you cannot account for the fact that you just can't go out and find them. You just cannot go out in the woods and find them. They only show up when they want to show up. So there's something to that. And then the other thing that supports that is they treat Bigfoot and, the Dogman and aliens all the same way. They say they don't exist. So something to that. So,
and if they didn't exist, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I think that I went so far off on my tangent that I forgot what my initial question was, but I'm trying to just get at what are the characteristics of a dogman that like we can all agree on. And I think that we can agree that from what I've heard that they're not going to eat you if they see you in the woods.
Right.
Most likely. Unless you are threatening. However, that's not always the case, correct?
Yeah, I don't think that anyone's really threatening when they come across them. I think they're more scared.
Yeah. Okay. And so, but you think that they come from another place?
Yes. And
I'm going to throw in this topic because I heard these people saying, there's none of these, but what about portals? Portals and I don't want to say portal like on the ship, it's a little hole that opens up. I don't know what it is, but it's a connection. Do you think they're coming through the portals?
Yeah, I do. And in the paranormal field, you can encounter portals. Well, it depends, I guess, if you're I can feel things like that. So I don't know about you. Like I can walk into a place and know whether or not there's a portal where there's a lot of entities coming in. So that's just one of the gifts that I have. So
all right, you have to stop there, Barbara. Can you give me an example of where's the last time you saw one?
The last time I encountered one, I was in a farmhouse in Connecticut, and I had gone for a pig roast. It was actually my boss's house. I'd never been there before. And I walked into her house, and this is just a description, but it felt like I was being pushed at all different angles, kind of like being in a mosh pit at a concert. And I could not stay in the house. I had to leave the house. And as soon as I left the house, I got violently ill, like projectile vomiting ill. It made me that sick. And that's just the force of what I felt in that house and how active it was.
So you're talking about a portal. So now I'm going back to the ship analogy, but so what? So the portal is in the house. I mean, there's a window in the house, and are things coming in and out of it?
Not like a window.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It's just an area in the house that feels differently than the rest of the house.
So we were talking about the portals, and they are different, you say, from the rest of the house. So what I'm trying to get at is from places like the Skinwalker Ranch, et cetera, et cetera, they talk about things showing up in these portals, and one of the things that showed up was one of these skinwalking dog creatures. And what they describe them as this, they're not like the dog man where they get up and walk on two legs, but they actually are just these what they call dire wolves. And they come through the portal. And these are credible high up government agents that said they saw one of these things come through a portal. The portal closed. The thing ran off. And I think there might have been two of them.
Okay.
So this is a high level government, researcher that's on the scene, checking everything out. And he's talking about portals. So, so there is something to that. Well, yes. All right. So have we gone, are we going to just stay with this thing being called a dogman, or do you think that it should be called something else?
Well, I think that it should keep its name based on eyewitness accounts and what it's been called since it was first seen. But do I think that it is a dogman? No, but that's what it's called, and that's what it's been called for a very long time.
Yeah. And okay, so speaking of calling that for a very long time, what about, have you heard of the dog soldiers? They're from the Sioux, the Native Americans, the Sioux tribe. Basically, they were dog soldiers in the Sioux tribes. I don't know about any other tribes, but have you heard about the dog soldiers?
I have not, no.
All right. Well, the dog soldiers were, and I'm just going to have to do this. I'm going to have to throw in a plug for my Deceptions of the Ages book, but there's a really strong corollary between the Freemasons and the Native Americans pre-Columbus.
Right.
The dog soldiers were basically part of what we would associate, with a Freemason lodge. So they were basically these were warrior societies. Not everybody can join. Very elite, and I think the dog soldiers would be comparable to like I heard them on one of these podcasts talking about berserkers in the Viking culture. Okay. So, but these dog soldiers were very good warriors, and they were initiated the same way as Freemasons are. So, I don't know what the connection is between a dog man and the dog soldiers, but obviously, a dog then was a beast of burden for the Native Americans. They pulled the travois, the thing before they had horses. So the dog was not anything except a beast of burden. So to associate them, their warrior class, with the beast of burden doesn't make any sense. So there could be something there. So that's that's something that we we need to look at further because I just don't have that much expertise in it, and we'd have to contact somebody that's an actual Native American that could talk about it more. But it's not a coincidence, I think, that they would have this cult of dog soldiers. Yeah. So
definitely something we should look into, though.
Let's just kind of for people that may not have even ever heard of an account of one of these dog soldiers. So these things, they look like dogs. They look like German shepherds, basically. Same ears, right? Mm-hmm. They stand on two legs. And what is the size of these things?
Like 12 feet?
Yeah, 12 feet.
With 9 to 12 feet, I'm guessing.
Yep. There's in Anchorage, Alaska, there's a Kodiak bear they have stuffed, and it's in the corner, and that's 12 feet. Yeah. And that is twice a man, right? I mean, so if you saw something like that, there's just, your world is definitely going to change. So, right. That is a very, very, very large animal and able to run at those kinds of speeds. So let me ask you this. We're getting close to the end of our hour here, but
Okay.
What do you think the association is? It's your content or contention that they're coming from someplace else, right?
Yeah.
What about Bigfoot? Do you think that they are in any way coming from the same place as the Bigfoot?
Through portals, yes. Maybe a different dimension, or maybe a different place.
Okay. And do you have, Barbara, because you have these abilities, do you have any, have you viewed anything? Have you done any psychic connections?
I have had an encounter in my dream state. I lucid dream. I've been lucid dreaming since I was a kid, and astral traveling. So I also have visions, and I actually had a encounter with the Lyran Council, which is technically another race of being.
Are those the felines? Are those the felines, Barbara?
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna have to stop you. I'm very sorry to do this, but what a great segue. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get a hold of James Gilliland at the ECETI Ranch right now. We're gonna go down because the what do you call them? The Lyrans?
Lyrans, yes.
The ECETI Ranch, you've got to check it out on YouTube. These Lyrans are flying in their ships every night at ECETI Ranch. They fly into Mount Adams in Washington State. So I'm going to go down there, hang out with James, get some interviews, and watch the Lyrans. So what about these fine felines?
My encounter was with the Lyran Council. And they just said that they wanted to have a talk with me. And that was the last encounter I had with them. And it was the only encounter I had with them. So I'm still waiting to hear from them again.
They sent for you, but did you go the first time? I mean, did you talk to them?
I talked to them, yes. They said that they wanted to talk to me further. Okay. There was not a lot of communication. It was just them saying, we want to talk to you. Okay. And that was pretty much they said, we're the Lyran Council and we'd like to talk to you further. And that was pretty much what they said.
What they're saying to you, Barbara, they're saying you go out to Washington State and go to the ECETI Ranch. That's what they're trying to tell you. So,
well, maybe I'll make a trip of it. In
a not so subtle way. Yes, because you need to come out while I'm doing my interviews there. So
okay. That would be interesting. It would be really neat to actually talk to someone else who's had an encounter with them. Oh,
he's not only had encounters with them. They talk to him on a regular basis. I can't remember. He talks to the Anunnaki, and this is so off topic, but it's not really, because Bigfoot also makes appearances down at the ECETI Ranch, which is one of the hotspots near Mount St. Helens. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you. Which
supports the portal theory.
Yeah. So you talked about a portal in Connecticut, and do they have Bigfoot in Connecticut?
Yeah, they have Bigfoot in Connecticut.
Do they have Dogman in Connecticut?
I'm not too sure about Dogman. I know New York State does. I've heard about encounters in New York State. Which isn't too far away. I mean, it's only 8 hours.
Right. Okay. Well, Barbara, I think this has just been a great...
Well, upstate New York, that is.
Yeah. I think this has been a great topic. It's been a great discussion. And I think to close it off, I think that we kind of... I went into this saying that I don't like Dogman, but... The more I listen to you, the more I think that that's probably right.
Well, I mean, it's like, why fix what's not broken?
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't want to change Bigfoot's name because Bigfoot's been Bigfoot forever. So,
well,
why change Dogman?
That might be a new episode. But I was going to say, I was going to throw in my my vote, I guess. Well, I like Wolfen. Remember Wolfen? Wasn't that like a movie in the 80s or something?
Wolfen. I don't know.
Has that German kind of Northern Canadian sound to it. Wolfen.
Yeah.
Sounds like a sounds like a German rock band or something. So maybe it was a German rock band. I don't know. Well, anyway, I say Wolfen. So if anybody agrees with Wolfen, please support me in the comments section. And who knows, we'll get on change.org and get a movement going and change
get a movement going.
Wolfen, so. All right. Well, Barbara, it has really been a fantastic podcast, and it's been great having you on as our co-host. So
thank you. I appreciate
thank you.
The time.
So our next podcast, we're going to be talking about, I think we're going to be talking about my Harstein Island incident, and we're going to be talking about more about this our association and the Sasquatch Files research team. Yes, exciting.
Very exciting.
And for guys who don't know that, check it out. It's the Sasquatch Files research team. It's John Kuykendall, famous Bigfoot author and researcher, and somebody who I've challenged repeatedly to be on my podcast. In fact, you want to hear a story before you go?
Sure.
The reason I joined the Sasquatch Files research team is because I tried to get John on Books in Hindsight, my old podcast, and I've always wanted to do paranormal stuff. And then John said, "Well, why don't you come over and manage a podcast that we're going to eventually do?" So that was the story, and long story short, I ended up here, and you're my co-host. So things work in very interesting ways. So
yes, I do not believe in coincidences.
So. Yep. So we will see you again on Friday, I guess. And today is May 15th. Yeah. Today is May 15th. Now, if you'd like to look for any information on Barbara or the podcast, go to encountersusa.com, and you can see research that we've done, investigations. We do special reports, all on YouTube, on Encounters USA on YouTube. So encountersusa.com, Encounters USA YouTube. And of course, you can see this podcast on Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. So with all of that, Barbara, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're such a great addition, and I'm so happy to, and I'm just looking forward to the next podcast just so we can see you again. Thanks for listening to tonight's show. Please remember, if you've had an encounter, we want to hear about it. Go ahead and email us at encountersusa1@gmail.com or contact us at encountersusa.com, our website, and go to the contact form. All right, everybody. Until next time, be careful out there. And if you're out in the woods, watch your back.